A longtime senior official laid off by one of Wall Street's top financial firms is now suing, accusing the company of racial bias against black women. Marilyn Booker spent more than a quarter century at Morgan Stanley. She once led the firm's diversity and inclusion program, and now she claims, in her words, that black lives do not matter at Morgan Stanley. Now, the firm strongly disputes that. National correspondent Jerika Duncan spoke with Booker in her first network TV interview since filing the lawsuit. Jerika, Marilyn Booker has a lot to say. Good morning to you.
Good morning. Marilyn Booker used to work right here at the headquarters, and she says, listen, she was an advocate for black employees. In fact, in recent years, she had been pushing a program that would allow for adequate training and support for black financial managers so that they could advance within the company. But Booker says she believes those efforts, among other things, caused Morgan Stanley to eliminate her position.
Marilyn Booker recalled the day she learned her 26-year career at Morgan Stanley was over.
The human resources person told me that my job was being eliminated. And the way they did it, 26 years, loyal employee, I like to say that I bled Morgan Stanley blue. And they fired me like I was a temp.
That was on December 9th, 2019.
Jobs are on the chopping block at Morgan Stanley.
Amid a round of layoffs that Morgan Stanley said included around 1,500 employees, more than 100 of which were managing directors like Booker. For 16 years, Booker served as the global head of diversity.
I remember when I was in that role, the firm, with respect to black employees, it was 8.8%. The last 10 years under James Gorman, that number is now 5.8%.
What about you, Mr. Gorman?
James Gorman took over as CEO in 2010, around the same time Booker was moved to the wealth management division. Morgan Stanley disputes Booker's claim and says the overall number of black employees at the company has increased in the last decade, going from 4.6% to 5.8%. And the number of black managing directors has more than tripled. But Booker says the problem with diversity goes beyond numbers.
They do not get the same mentoring. They don't get the same support. So they either fail out of the program or they walk away in defeat.
Within months of proposing an idea to address those problems, Booker says she was fired. And this month she filed a lawsuit bringing claims against Gorman and managing director Barry Krauk for race and gender discrimination, retaliation, and unequal pay. Booker's attorney, Jean Christensen.
I believe we will be able to show that women at Morgan Stanley in various positions are underpaid compared to their male peers, but black female employees specifically are discriminated against even worse.
Why do you think that is?
Companies like Morgan Stanley have been getting away with this for years.
Doing the right thing alone isn't compelling enough for most companies to...
Martin Davidson has been advising major banks on diversity programs for over 15 years.
I have a hard time thinking about anyone that has not dealt with this, to be honest with you. Sometimes dealing with these lawsuits and settling them for what seem like large amounts of money, for them is just a cost of doing business.
Just 1 week after protests erupted over the death of George Floyd, Morgan Stanley's CEO sent an email to staff acknowledging a turning point in race relations and announcing $25 million to create an Institute of Inclusion.
I wonder if this tragic thing had not happened with George Floyd, if all of these epiphanies would have taken place.
What outcome are you hoping for?
I am hopeful that CEOs will take a look at my case and then take a critical look at their organizations and ask themselves, is writing a check to the NAACP LDF enough? Is forming a committee enough? I want them to give people the freedom to speak freely about what the issues are. And lastly, I want them to give black people a safe space to be able to do that before they get to the point where they have to either leave the organization or they end up in court with the organization.
Morgan Stanley tells CBS this morning that it strongly rejects the allegations in the lawsuit of discrimination and unequal pay. The company emphasized that its new Inclusion Institute is just one of many pieces of a broader and long-running standing to try and address diversity. In fact, they said they have 30 employees that are dedicated to tackling those specific issues. But Booker's attorney, meanwhile, says that since filing that lawsuit, she's received more than 10 calls from current and former employees with similar complaints as Booker. Tony?
Boy, the whole thing calls to mind Melody Hobson's suggestion that if you want to change diversity numbers in corporate America, you've got to tie them to executive pay. Money talks there and elsewhere. Drika, thank you very much.